Hello everyone, hope you're doing well. Today we're having a look at a new light tank which is coming to Germany in update groundbreaking. This is the Wiesel 1A4, and the Wiesel 1A4 is one of the new Wiesels that is coming to the game. It also has the Wiesel 1A2 and also the Ocelot, which is technically a Wiesel 2. The 1A4 is based off the Wiesel 1 chassis and is absolutely tiny. It is a micro vehicle, I think is the best way of putting it. It only has 8mm of armor, so this thing is not surviving anything. But it also has two crew members. You can see one in the turret here, the gunner, and then the driver in the front. There's also an 87 horsepower engine, so not incredibly beefy, but the vehicle itself is only 3.3 tons. So this thing can motor around at 80 kilometers an hour. It can also go in reverse pretty well as well, showing that its mobility should be pretty nice. The obvious survivability from the armor and the amount of crew is very low, but the real reason why this thing will be survivable is because of the visibility that it has, and also the fact you're going to be able to hide it in so many different areas. This version of the Wiesel has access to a 20mm, this is the Rheinmetall 202, and it gets access to DM63. And the DM63, which is a rank 4 modification, so it's going to take you a while to get there, but at least you get the DM43 at rank 1, which has 57mm of pen. The DM63 gets 66, 60, and 25mm worth of pen. So that's at least quite nice for it, some APDS alongside it. You get a laser rangefinder, you also get thermals for the gunner. You get Gen 2 thermals and also scouting for this vehicle. So if you want to play passively near the enemy and just try and scout everything out, you can do that. The vehicle is also at 7.0 right now, so 7.0 with Gen 2 thermals. I think this thing might be the lowest BR vehicle in-game with thermals and their Gen 2, which is absolutely nuts. Has a good turret rotation speed, a decent gun depression on it as well, so you can go from high ground to attack people and all of that good stuff. When it comes to the rest of the modifications, they're pretty standard on the vehicle, nothing to really write home about, and also at the same time you will find the vehicle right here between the Kugelblitz and the Gepard, which I find kind of odd because it's labeled as an SPAA right now. But I feel like this would be much better labeled as a light tank. But if they want to put it in the SPAA line instead of over here, which is what I'm guessing because this is getting kind of full right now, then that makes the most sense. So the Wiesel doesn't have the greatest firepower, and one of the actual big disadvantages of this vehicle is that it's German. And I know that sounds really weird, but I'll show you why. So obviously the tricolor desert is my favorite camo when it comes to these little German tanks. So the reason why certain vehicles like the Type 87 have done really well, the reason this vehicle started at 7.3 and it got bumped to 8.0 after like one BR update, is because it faced a lot of vehicles which have pretty light armor. So stuff like BMPs, Marders, Leopards, vehicles like that which it could tear apart. If it faced more stuff such as the Soviet vehicles, such as, you know, the T-54s or the IS-3 and the IS-4M, it wouldn't have done as well unless it got to the side of them. Also, Japan gets wrecked by, you know, this stuff as well, not having a ton of armor at the BR. Same with China doing pretty well, just like the Soviets do. But Italy, you know, around the BR doesn't have a ton of armor on its vehicles. So you can see why the Type 87's natural lineups it would do pretty well against. With the Wiesel 1A4, it's slightly different because, well, obviously you can't face German vehicles, so you can't face any of these, which it could easily kill. You can't face the Leopard, which it could also easily kill. Instead, you're going to face some bigger bruisers, so stuff such as, you know, the 7.0 to 8.0 stuff from America, which is generally pretty tanky, apart from some of the light vehicles, like it versus an M103 or a T-32 or an M46. It's going to struggle to pen them overall, even sometimes from the side. The Soviets have a lot of heavy vehicles around these BRs as well, and so do the British when it comes to these vehicles here. You know, these aren't easy to go through, at least from the front. You're going to have to aim for road wheels and stuff like that. So when we compare the Wiesel compared to something like a Type 87, I think the Wiesel is going to have a slightly more rougher time, just because of the fact that it's not going to be able to pen stuff as easily as the Type 87 would. But that still doesn't mean it's not going to be effective. It's going to be an incredibly effective scout vehicle. It's going to be a lot of fun. So the first thing to know about this vehicle is, as I said, its mobility. You can see here that it kind of motors around the place, even on like rough terrain, as this is counted as. You can see that we're getting up to 40 kilometers an hour, absolutely no issue with the thing. We're just going around and just going incredibly quickly. Whoop! You gotta watch out for that. Its actual clearance off the ground though is pretty low, so you gotta watch out for water. You will just drown. And one of the things to know about it as well is when it comes to its turret traverse, so it doesn't have the stabilizer, so its turret traverse is a little bit weaker. But what it does have is, can we actually get across here? No, goddamn, I'll have to go the other way. This is as far as it gets on the side, so you can't 360 traverse it. It's pretty much, what's that, around about maybe 120 from the normal. So you can't shoot behind you, so you're going to have to rotate, but luckily this thing has insane rotation on the vehicle. It also has dual drive, so moving this thing around is going to be super easy. This thing in arcade is going to be an absolute menace, and it might also be a vehicle which might be fun for racing as well. You can see also the mirrors work, which is just a lovely touch. We've seen like a bunch of like mirror work when it comes to the game recently, which is quite nice. But yeah, the main weakness of this thing is not its mobility, it's not its size, because its size means it can be hid, it's not its scouting, it's not going to be its overall ability in the game, it's going to be its gun. You know, it has 100 rounds in a belt, it has 4 belts, so that should be completely fine. But the penetration is not going to be the best. You're going to have to catch a lot of people out on the side, which you can do with a vehicle like this because it's absolutely tiny, but even through the side, you can see against the T-54 chassis, it's not going to be the easiest, right? And that's the general issue with this thing. There's a lot of heavy tanks between like 6.0 to 8.0, especially on the major nations. And that basically means that you're going to be sat in a place, and you can see it doesn't go through, that you're going to be sat in a place where you're going to have to get behind them and maybe hit the engine, or maybe scout them and hope that your allies can deal with them. Because generally, this thing is not going to have enough firepower to be able to deal with a lot of mediums and heavy tanks that are around the place. But as we've said many times, when it comes to something like War Thunder, there is more than one way to skin a cat. You know, there's more than one way to be able to deal with stuff. You can see here with the vehicle, you know, we could shoot its engine, we could maybe kill, you know, the ammunition inside. You can go around the side and use the gun to be able to barrel stuff, and then hopefully they don't get machine gunned, you know, as you're going around. But you can be a menace on the battlefield, and we've seen a lot of vehicles over the last little bit which have been added, which are just general menaces on the battlefield and going to be incredibly fun to play. And I feel like this machine is going to be no different. As a person who really enjoys light tanks, as a person who likes zipping around and attacking stuff, it's going to be super fun to play this thing, and I'm already looking forward to it. The lineup around it is not the best, so you might have to up-tier it into 7.3, but at 7.3 you've got a very nasty lineup indeed. Maybe you could run this thing with the M48. The M48 stock grind's not the best, but it should be fine. Is that some kind of like suspension system at the back there that I'm seeing? You see that like wobbling around there? I'm guessing it is. That's pretty cool. Nice little factor there, seeing that it moves. But I'm sure many people will enjoy this thing, and also it's going to be great against people who aren't paying attention on the map. You know, it's going to be awesome at dealing with them dealing with the guys who really don't look for anything or around anything. So we'll have to see how it does in that regard, but I think it'll be very, very powerful. It just, in a one-on-one matchup where the enemy knows where you are, it's going to be a really rough vehicle to use, and you know, you're probably going to most of the time not come out on top. It's also going to be stupidly ineffective against certain vehicles, but at least against aircraft, it still should have a decent go with the rapid-fire, high muzzle velocity 20mm. I hope you all have a wonderful day, and I'll see you next time. I'd just like to thank Professor X 1718, Orange Tail, Sakoshi Tiger, BRFC 15, Teddy, John Ryman, Universe A, Eugens Terry, Ambrosius McClellan, Daniel Stanton, Martinez, B. Young, and then Kyle Kin, Barine, Lafouche, and also Samuel Slick for supporting the channel.